Welcome to ISO 27001 Annex A Controls Explained. In the next few minutes, we'll walk through all 93 information security controls organized across the 4 categories introduced in the 2022 revision: organizational, people, physical, and technological. You'll understand what each category covers, how the controls work together to protect information assets, and how the new structure differs from the 2013 version. Whether you're implementing ISO 27001 for the first time or updating your Statement of Applicability, this overview gives you the complete picture. Let's get started. Let's start by understanding how the 2022 revision restructured Annex A and why this matters for your implementation. The restructuring of Annex A was one of the most significant changes in the 2022 revision. Let's compare the old and new structures. The 2013 version organized 114 controls across 14 domains like access control, cryptography, operations security, and communication security. While logical, this structure created overlap and confusion. Some controls appeared in multiple contexts, and practitioners often struggled to map controls to their actual security objectives. The 2022 version consolidates controls into 4 intuitive categories with 93 controls total. 11 new controls address modern threats like cloud security, threat intelligence, and data masking. Overlapping controls were merged, and an attribute system lets you filter controls by type, property, cybersecurity concept, and operational capability. The result is cleaner, more practical, and easier to implement. Here is an overview of each category, what it covers, and the number of controls. Organizational controls form the largest category with 37 controls. They cover information security policies, roles and responsibilities, asset management, access control policies, supplier relationships, incident management, business continuity, and legal compliance. These controls establish the management framework that everything else depends on. People controls include 8 controls addressing the human element. From pre-employment screening through employment terms, security awareness training, disciplinary processes, and termination procedures. The 2022 revision added remote working as a distinct control, reflecting the shift to distributed work environments. Physical controls cover 14 controls for protecting facilities, equipment, and physical media. Secure perimeters, entry controls, equipment siting and protection, clear desk and screen policies, storage media handling, and supporting utilities. These controls are often underestimated but remain critical even in cloud-first organizations. Technological controls are the second largest category with 34 controls. They cover endpoint devices, privileged access, authentication, malware protection, backups, logging, network security, secure development, vulnerability management, encryption, and several new controls like data masking, data leakage prevention, and web filtering. Now let's examine the most important new controls and the critical controls that every organization must get right. The 2022 revision introduced 11 new controls addressing modern threats and technologies. Threat intelligence is entirely new. Organizations must collect and analyze information about threats relevant to their context, industry-specific attack trends, vulnerability disclosures, and threat actor behavior. This intelligence feeds into risk assessment, security monitoring, and incident response. It transforms security from reactive to proactive. Cloud service security addresses the unique risks of cloud adoption. It requires defining security requirements for cloud services, assessing providers, managing the shared responsibility model, monitoring cloud configurations, and planning for provider exit. This control closes a major gap that existed when organizations used the 2013 version with cloud infrastructure. Data masking limits unnecessary exposure of sensitive data. Techniques include pseudonymization, anonymization, tokenization, and dynamic data masking. This control is critical for development and testing environments where real production data should never be used, and for analytics where personal data exposure should be minimized. Data leakage prevention detects and prevents sensitive information from leaving the organization through unauthorized channels, email, cloud storage, USB devices, or web uploads. DLP tools monitor data in motion, at rest, and in use, applying policies that block or alert when sensitive data moves in unexpected ways. The 2022 revision introduced an attribute system that lets you view and filter controls from multiple perspectives. The control type attribute classifies whether a control prevents incidents from occurring, detects incidents after they happen, or corrects the impact of incidents. This helps you verify that your control portfolio has an appropriate balance. Relying entirely on detective controls, for example, means you are always responding rather than preventing. The security properties attribute maps each control to the CIA triad dimensions it protects. Access controls primarily protect confidentiality. Backup controls protect availability. Checksums protect integrity. This mapping helps you ensure that all three properties are adequately addressed for each information asset in your scope. The cybersecurity concepts attribute aligns controls with the NIST cybersecurity framework functions. This creates a natural bridge between ISO 27001 and NIST CSF, making dual compliance easier and ensuring your control set covers the full cybersecurity lifecycle from identification through recovery. The operational capabilities attribute groups controls by practical security function, governance, asset management, identity and access management, threat and vulnerability management, continuity, and several others. This view is particularly useful for assigning control ownership to teams based on their operational responsibilities. Let's close with the most important lessons about Annex A controls. First, the restructuring into 4 categories makes Annex A more intuitive, but every control still requires a decision in your statement of applicability. You must either implement each control or justify its exclusion based on your risk assessment. The simpler structure does not mean less work, it means more clarity. Second, the 11 new controls are not optional extras. Cloud security, threat intelligence, data leakage prevention, and data masking address threats that organizations face today. If these risks exist in your context, these controls must be implemented. Auditors will specifically examine how you address the new controls. Third, use the attribute system as a verification tool. Filter your controls by type to check your balance of preventive, detective, and corrective measures. Filter by security property to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability are all covered. The attributes make gaps visible. And fourth, controls work as an interconnected system. Access control depends on asset management. Incident response depends on logging. Awareness training supports every other control. Implementing controls in isolation dramatically reduces their effectiveness. Design your ISMS as an integrated system, not a checklist of independent items. That wraps up our overview of ISO 27001 Annex A controls. In the full Udemy course, you'll get a detailed analysis of every one of the 93 controls, practical implementation guidance for each control category, statement of applicability templates, and real-world examples of how organizations implement these controls effectively. Click the link below or scan the QR code to enroll and master Annex A. Thank you for watching. If you found this overview helpful, subscribe to the channel for more content, and check the description for the link to the full course. See you in the next video.